All right, so there are several things we have to download to get to work, or actually several links we'll be working with today. The first one, anyway, so we'll be following several links here today, and I guess we'll talk about them when we get to them. Okay, so first off, what I'd like to do is I would like to teach you a little bit about the format of Excel files. Excel does a really weird thing. Microsoft does a really weird thing in the way that they've set up the Excel files. It's quite unexpected, and we have to understand it a little bit to be able to understand how to modify the ribbon. That's what we're doing today. You've seen how all the homework assignments, they've got a special tab in the ribbon called Assignment. You don't have to do anything special on your machine. That tab follows the workbook. Whoever opens the workbook gets that tab. So if I'm in Excel and I want to modify the ribbon, I've got something that I can do, and you might think, well, maybe I just do this, because I'll put up a blank workbook. I can choose File Options, and then I can come to Customize Ribbon, and you might think that over here somewhere is how I customize the ribbon. Changes that I make to the ribbon in this fashion change this installation of Excel. I'm changing the way this installed version of Excel is going to look. I could come and take off I'm tired of that home tab. I'm going to get rid of it. That affects this installation. Whatever workbook gets opened in here doesn't have any effect on that. And if I take a workbook that I create with this ribbon customization, with the way I've got it set up here, over to someone else, that workbook will have no effect on how their ribbons look. And so if we're going to make a modification to the workbook, a ribbon modification to the workbook that follows the workbook, it's totally different. And there is no graphical interface built into Excel for doing it. We've got to do some crazy things, and that's what we're going to see today. So the first thing to realize is we're going to have to bypass Excel to work with the Excel file to make these changes. So I'm just going to open up, I'm going to open any old workbook. I'm going to open a workbook that has a ribbon modification. Should be able to find any one of our assignments. So let me come to Downloads. Hopefully I've got an assignment here. Any of these look like our assignments? I just may have never actually downloaded a student's assignment. I must have on this computer at some point. Let's go by type, go find Excel, macro enabled. Oh, logic and reference. This is a different assignment, but this should do the trick. So I'm going to open this. Oh, no it won't, because it's got password protected. That's not going to do it. Managing workbooks and email. I really don't see one that I have here. Let me go ahead and download one. I do want to have one that's got a ribbon modification in it, so let me download one from My Educator. Okay. Start learning. Hopefully I'm who I think I am. 1206. Manage assessments. Okay. Folks, if you want to do this along with me, you're welcome to. You won't need to do this to build. I'm just on the example. So I have here a workbook that has a ribbon modification. Parse email b6.xlsm. The crazy thing about the Excel file format is that it's actually a zip archive of a bunch of XML documents. That sounds like a weird thing to say. And almost, when I first heard it, I couldn't believe it. Watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to change the XLSM, or XLSX, works the same with either one. I'm just changing the name of the file to .zip. That's not normally a thing you want to do. Just change the extension on a file. That's what we're doing. It says, are you really sure you want to do that? Yeah, I'm sure. Okay, so now I'm going to extract this. Extract all. And that's a great place to put it. That's fine. Wait a minute. Downloads. I don't know. Browse. Apparently my resolution is such that I can't get to the button at the bottom. Tab, enter. There we go. Okay. So that should have extracted that file to a folder with the same name. What was the name? Parse email. Parse email zip. Well, we can look at it without extracting it, although extracting it's kind of nice. Let me go into this and then just say extract all. Okay, so I double click this. I'm looking at the zip file itself. Let me extract from here. Extract all. Downloads B6. I must be hitting cancel. Okay. But this is the file structure. I changed it to zip, and here it is. I'm going to come to Excel. They're clever here. Excel. I'll come to worksheets. Here are the 3 worksheets that are in that workbook. If I open these up, I'm just going to see the XML. Let's view this so that it wraps. Word wrap. Oh, it is wrapping. That's the whole XML for that worksheet. You know, it only has information on which cells actually have values in them. And so here we're saying A1, I guess. And the information's here. Why would you ever do this? Well, just to kind of see that's what it is. But it turns out, you know, I mean, if you really had to edit this and you had to change that number, you didn't have Excel on your machine, you could do it. You could extract it, change the file, recompress it back together, and it's a working file where you've changed the data. That's a weird thing to do. But if we look right here, a little bit higher, if there's a custom ribbon, then you have this folder, Custom UI. It's a custom user interface. I'll open that up, and here's Custom UI XML. This is the definition of the modifications to the ribbon. You're familiar with what these ribbons buttons typically look like. They have a group that says Show Instructions. First of all, there's a tab that says Assignment. There's a group that says Show Instructions. That group has one button on it. Here's the button. What is it? Whoops. Here's the button. What does it say on that button? Got some fancy button over here that when I click it, it does something. What does it say on the button? The label for that button is Instruction Sheet. There's another group called Submit. On this one, there's one specifically dealing with email. There's a group with email. It's got 2 buttons on it. Folks, this is what we have to do. We have to modify the file structure such that we get that custom UI folder and we get this document in here that's all done up like this. How many of you are going, oh my gosh, that's insane? Yeah, I am too. That's crazy that's what you have to do. That Microsoft says, yeah, we're going to let you put a custom ribbon in here. Oh yeah, that's how you do it. Rename the file, extract it, create a couple of folders in here, put an XML file in here that describes what you want to do. I mean, they released this format in 2007. It's almost 10 years later, and Microsoft has not created a tool to allow us to do this easily. That's the good news. Why is that the good news? Because it means nobody knows how to do this. No one can do this. And so when you do something like this, you will impress your friends, neighbors, and your mother will be proud of you. And so this really is something that almost no one knows how to do. When you get, I mean, the competitors, when I say competitors, I mean the people that you're trying to get jobs against, your fellow workers that are vying for the same promotion, they don't know how to do this stuff. And it turns out it's not too bad because there's some tools that have been developed to make this a little bit easier. But fundamentally, that's what we have to do. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at a couple of the links that we have on Learning Suite. Okay, so one of these is this site right here. So there's a guy in the Netherlands named Ron de Bruin. And back when Excel 2007 was released, he's reading the documentation going, oh, hey, you can customize the ribbon. This is insane. We need a website that really shows how to do this. And this guy had the first website up that really talked about, for people, if you're going to modify the ribbon, this is what you need to know. And he's done an excellent job of keeping it up to date. And so this is really the go-to site on, if I want details on how to work with the ribbon, this is the place. It turns out now in our book, we've got a pretty good chapter on it. And so most of the stuff I'm covering today is covered in the book, in the chapter on the book. But in terms of external reference, this is the one. So did I open that already? So here it is. Ron de Bruin's Excel Automation, Change the Ribbon, 2007 to 2016. That's good news. It's 2016 and it's updated to say this works for 2016. That's good. And so this is just another resource for you. This one page is just getting you started. There's lots of things that are here, lots of examples that you can work with. Okay. Next one that we have here, modification. Actually, let's come to this one next. The Office Custom UI Editor. That should take you to this link, openxmldeveloper.org. So from the last time I taught this, we have an announcement up here that says openxml.org is shutting down. So hopefully we'll be able to find where this file is later in life. But we need to download this thing right here, the Office Custom UI Editor setup.zip. Download and install this tool. So it should be a pretty straightforward installation. You're going to download it. I'm going to extract it. Oh, I hope I can extract it. Extract all. There we go. And then I'm just going to run this. This should install this tool on this computer. Yes, I agree to whatever I'm agreeing to. Next, next, next. Do I really want to install this? Yes. And that's been installed. I'm going to go ahead and bring this up, and then I will give you a moment to get that software installed. And while you're downloading and installing it, I'll tell you what it is. Here it is, Custom UI Editor for Microsoft. That's what we're looking for. I'm going to run that, and it brings up something that just looks like a text editor. Okay, was there a question over here? Let's get that installed. If you have questions or problems, raise your hand, and I will come and assist. What this is going to do is it's going to do the heavy lifting in terms of extracting the archive, putting the files in that we need, rezipping it up. So all we'll have to do once we have this tool is be able to get the XML description of the ribbon formatted correctly. Oh, is it saying you need to have .Net? Yeah, get the .Net 4.6, I guess. Folks, this may require you to download some .Net thing if you don't have the current .Net framework.
Do you know how to work with parallels? Like if I download it on the back side, it'll still work on the side?
That should be okay. Is there a question over here? How many of you is it telling you that you've got to update your .NET framework? Maybe a third or a fourth of you? And is that going through okay here? Registration will not occur. That framework. Yikes. This setup requires .NET Framework 3.0. Please install the framework. Okay, go see if you can find the 3.0 framework. I don't know, give that one a try. Can you have them both installed together? I don't know. Give that a try, let's see what happens. Run. Download and install. Searching required. Downloading required files. Looks like that's going through. Yeah. Anyone else need help? Questions? You can do all this without this tool, but you have to go through that process. Change the name, extract it, put those folders in, put the files in, recompress it, change the name back. Give me the high sign when this either completes or when it fails. Okay. So how many of you successfully have this tool open at this point? How many of you do not have it open but are trying to get it open? Still a few of you. Let's spend a minute working on that. Okay, so here's the thought, folks. What we need to do is we need to have an existing Excel workbook that we want to add the ribbon modification into. And so let's go ahead and begin by making a brand new workbook. So I've got my ribbon editor open. That's fine. I'm just going to leave it open for a minute. I'm going to come over here to Excel and open a brand new workbook. So I'll close whichever one I got open here now. Let's see, File, Close. And then File, New, brand new blank workbook. I just got to save it something. Now, folks, it turns out you can put a ribbon modification on an XLSX file, but the only thing that ribbon can do is it can run VBA code. So you can have a ribbon up there that doesn't do anything, but if you actually want to do something, it's got to be an XLSM workbook. So I'm going to change this format to XLSM. And where am I going to save it? I guess I'm going to save it in my downloads. And so I will call it XLSM. I'll just call it ribbon 1. And save. Okay, so now I have ribbon 1 XLSM. There's no VBA in it, but it's a macro-enabled workbook. It turns out the custom UI editor will allow you to have the same workbook open in Excel and in the editor. Don't ever do this. Close it from Excel first, then open it in the editor. So File, Close. And then I'll go find that same file in my editor. So I am opening this, going to my downloads, date modified, there's ribbon 1. Now it's open. Now it says ribbon 1 right here, that's my only indication. This place is still blank, that's all right, we'll get to it.
How come we don't have them open at the same time?
The question is, why don't you want them open at the same time? If you have them open at the same time, here's what'll happen. I've got the workbook kind of extracted and open over here in my Office editor. I've got it open up here at the same time in Excel, and I'll make some changes to the code in Excel. Okay, great, I got that working now. Oh, I need to make some change to the ribbon. I'll come over here and make a change to my ribbon. I'll hit save here, and what happens when I hit save here? It overwrites whatever I had open in the Excel workbook. It would just, without even prompting, boom, overwritten. So the safest thing is to say I'm only going to, this is one file, it's the same file. I'm going to edit it only in one place at a time. I'll only have it open in one place at a time. Okay, so here's the thing. The first thing is that, remember, we've got to have that structure. We have to have the folder created, the custom UI folder, and we've got to have the XML file to hold the ribbon modification. So we come to the Insert tab to put that in. Now we have two options here, a custom a 2007 style or 2010 style. So of course 2007 was when they changed the file format to allow this stuff to happen. They made some other modifications in 2010. They haven't changed it since then. So 2010 is the same for 2013 and the same for 2016. There's some differences between 2010 and 2007. Here's the trick. If I use a 2010 custom UI part and someone opens the workbook in 2007, they will not see the ribbon modification. However, if I use the 2007 style and they open it in 2010, they can still see it. It's like there's some additional functionality in 2010 that's not available in 2007. I've never wanted that. I don't even know what it is. I've never wanted that functionality. And so we're going to stick with the 2007 custom UI part, and that will put in customui.xml. Whew. Questions? Okay, so now we just got to type in that XML document that we had here. Don't type this stuff. Copy it from somewhere. Who might be a good place to copy it from? Oh, Ron DeBruin. That's right. He's got a whole page on it. So I'm going to come back to that link that talks about the Ron DeBruin site on ribbon modification from Learning Suite. And right here on this page, this front page, there should be an example for working with an example XML file. We're going to go ahead and copy this file and put it in just paste it right in here. So over here on the Ron DeBruin website, there's the very first block. In fact, I think it's the only XML block on that page. You're going to find that block, copy it, and paste it right in here. How did we get the custom UI XML showing? We said insert Office 2007 custom UI part. Incidentally, if you wanted to, you could have a different ribbon show up for 2007 than for 2010. You can put both of these in here. then 2007 would show one, 2010 or later would show the other. Question in the back?
Have you tried the sample XML?
Yeah, the question is, have we tried the sample XML? The answer is yes. Don't do it. There are corrections that we have to make in it. In fact, let me just cut this out. I think I'm going to cut this out. So you can say insert, oh, hey, there's some sample XML right here. And it turns out that this schema is wrong. At least it's wrong for the 2007. This might be the one that we need for the 2010, but we're going to stick with the one for 2007. Okay, so let's talk through what this XML file is saying. So this first part here says, hey, this is a ribbon modification. This is the custom UI, custom user interface. It starts with the open custom UI tag. It ends with the / custom UI tag. Everything between those two tags is what the ribbon modification is. The only thing I know how to do inside the custom UI is to change the ribbon. There may be other things, or in the future, other things may come around. But for now, everything is the ribbon. So we're saying ribbon to / ribbon. This is the change of the ribbon. Inside that, we've got the set of tabs. So this is the set of tabs. We're changing something on the tabs of the ribbon. And now this says we're going to modify an existing tab. So this says tab, and when we see ID MSO, MSO stands for Microsoft Office. What this is saying is this is a Microsoft Office identifier. This is some built-in tab that we're going to change. We're going to be adding some functionality to an existing tab. Ultimately, we're going to see how to add our own tab. But for right now, we're just adding functionality to an existing tab. Question?
I'd like to make notes on that. Is there any way to comment in stuff on this?
Is there a way to put comments? I don't know the answer to that. So the question is, what's a comment in XML? Presumably, if we can comment a block, if we can put a comment block in XML, we should be able to do that. Okay, so it's the same as HTML. Let's give it a shot. Whether this will work or not, I'm not sure. I think it probably will. So let me just try to put a comment in here and we'll see if it works. So the comment is open tag bracket exclamation point, hyphen hyphen, hyphen hyphen close. Anything between that should be a comment. This just says we are going to change. We're going to change the home tab. Let me just, since you're probably making notes on what we're talking about right now, let me go ahead and run the process through to see if we can make this work. So in fact, there's no reason that we can't all do this if you want to try it along with me. I'm gonna save this. File save. I'm gonna close it. File close. I'm gonna come back to Excel and open that again in Excel. By the way, Alt FR will bring open your list of recent files. So FR1 will just always, Alt FR1 will open the most recently opened file. If I come here to home, then we see that I've got this new button. Folks, if you open Excel and there's a happy face that says click me, and you click on it, you deserve whatever happens to your life as a result of that. Right? It's like Alice in Wonderland. Someone says, eat me. You ate that? That wasn't. Okay. I'm going to close that, open this. I'm going to come back and open up that same one again. I've closed it in Excel. I'm opening it up again in the Office Custom UI Editor. Okay, so that means, yeah, we can put comments in this and it doesn't upset anybody. So that's the syntax for a comment. Okay, so from tab to /tab, we're saying whatever happens here is going to be added on to the existing tab. Inside that tab, we've got a group. And you've seen that, right? How different buttons come in groups, little word under the group. Another group, word, another group, word. So here's what we're saying. We are adding a custom group. Everything we put in here, everything we create that's new, we have to give it a unique identifier. And so we're making a new group. The ID is custom group 1. This is arbitrary. We can name this whatever we want to as long as I don't have two IDs in the XML document that are exactly the same. The label then is what's going to show up there. our latest virus. And then insert after MSO. What does MSO QS to mean? Microsoft Office. This is a built-in identifier. This is not me coming up with this. This is me having to go and find out what's the identifier for the editing group, and this group that we're making will go after that particular group. Group to slash group defines that group. Here then we've got we've got one button in here. Now, unlike all the other tags we've seen so far, the button tag is a unary tag. It does not have an open and a closing bracket because there's nothing that goes inside the button. Button's the last level down. And so instead of having a slash button tag that ends it, when I get to the closing angle bracket, I just put a slash right before it. That's how we do unary tags in XML. That's how it says, oh, this is a tag. I'm not looking for another ending tag for this. This ends itself. So that's how that works. So that's why this one has a slash at the end, but none of the other ones do, is because it's a unary tag. It has to have an ID. The ID is arbitrary. It's got to start with a letter, any combination of letters, numbers, and the underscore character. The label shows up here. There are two sizes for buttons, large and normal. You'd think it's small, but it's not. It's normal and large. It reminds me of olives. You know what the smallest size of olive is? I mean, if you go try to buy a can of small olives, what's the smallest size you can get? Medium. Medium's the smallest one. Then it goes like large, extra large, jumbo, and colossal. That's like the grade of olives. But the smallest one, so there's no small, it's just normal. So you've got normal or large. Now, on action then needs to be the name of a macro. This has to be the name of a macro. Actually, it's not really a macro because a macro is something you can just run. Macros don't have parameters, right? If I make a sub-procedure and put a parameter, I just can't run that. It turns out that this sub-procedure that we're calling here has to have a very specific parameter. We'll see that here in just a second. So it's the name of a procedure that's going to execute when the user clicks on this button. Now, image MSO, this is, if you're going to use a built-in image, there are hundreds of them. If you're going to use one of the built-in ones, you just put the identifier for this here. I have never found a good way to see the list of buttons, and so I built a page that did them. So I've got a link to that for you on Learning Suite. So if you come to Learning Suite, there is MS Office built-in image names. If you click on that, it'll take a minute to load, but it's just going to open up a page that has, it shows you all the images. I think these came out of Excel 2010, and so 2013 they changed them a little bit, but the pictures are generally the same, they just have a little different styling. So you'll still have an idea for what you're getting. Here's the happy face. If I click on it, it's going to tell me what the image MSO is, and it'll put it there so you can copy it. So it's called happy face. If I go back to my editor, we should see that. There it is, happy face. That's the name of the image. It turns out the image name is case sensitive, so you've got to get it exactly right. So all of these images are the ones that are built in and available to you inside of Excel. You just pick the one you want, pull open the, copy the MSO identifier, and then you're ready to make a button with that image on it. There's a question over here.
I was just curious, can you make your own images?
Can you make your own images? The answer is yes. I will show you how to do that today. Baby steps. We're just getting started. Okay, you know what I'm going to do here? I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to copy this button block and duplicate it. So I'm just going to add another button. So I've got the happy face button. I also want to have the home. Here's the home button. It doesn't matter which other image you use as long as it's a valid identifier. And I'm going to change the image MSO to that identifier, blog home page. That's the name of it. These could both run the same macro. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense, though. So I'm going to change one of these to say macro 2. And click me, no, let's see. I'll call this go home. Go home. Now, I cannot leave the ID the same. In fact, if those IDs are the same, we'll have a problem. Here's good news. This tool has an XML Validator built into it. I should be able to click on that button, and it should look over the XML and tell me, do I have any problem? It says, yeah, custom button 1 is already used as an ID. I've got a conflict in that identifier. So I'll just change this one to custom button 2. Click on my validate again, and it says, hey, this looks pretty good. If I were missing a tag here, I've got a mismatched tag now. This should tell me there's a problem. The tab start tag on line 5 does not match the end of tag somewhere later. So down here, it's telling me that's my problem. So it's kind of nice. Even though we've got to work in XML and it seems kind of hideous, at least we've got the validator that can tell us when we make a change, is the syntax valid? Okay. We need to write some code to be able to deal with this ribbon. Fortunately, this button right here generates VBA callbacks. So I'm going to click on this button, and it's going to look across. It's going to look across all my buttons and say, oh, you've got one called macro 1, you've got one called macro 2. When I click on this button, it says you're going to need some sub-procedures created, macro 1 and macro 2. But the important thing here is that it's giving you this part right here. When the user clicks on that button in the ribbon is going to say, we got to call macro 1. But we're also going to, the ribbon is also going to send along a reference to the button that called it. That's going to let me do some neat things. On the very simplest side, you might think, I really don't need that for anything. But it will allow me to essentially write one procedure that can handle all of the buttons and then decide what to do. So I can make one procedure that says, this is a button that was clicked. Great. Come in here, find out which ID was clicked, and then decide what to do from there. It really can make your code a lot cleaner. But we have, because the button is going to pass the reference to the control the user clicked on, we have to have a parameter to receive it. Otherwise, it won't be able to execute the procedure. So what we do with the callbacks, it turns out this tool is not sophisticated enough to actually put these procedures into your code. Microsoft has been very careful about not letting third-party tools edit the VBA code. Do you see why that would be a problem? That's virus land, to have someone else changing your VBA code. And Microsoft has done a great job locking that down. And so this other tool doesn't have the ability to actually put this VBA code in, so the next best thing they do, they write it for you here. You come here and copy it with Control-C, and then you can paste it in on your own. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to come back to my custom. To actually save this, I've got to come out of my callbacks by clicking over here on Custom UI, and then I can save, File Save, and File Close. I'll then open it up again in Excel. Check and make sure that my buttons are there. There they are. Click me and go home, both here. I'll open up my code editor, Alt F11, insert a regular old module, and I'll paste that code in. So macro 1 probably should have a better name, but that's the one that does the smiley face. I'll just put a message box. I can't believe you clicked the smiley face. I before E is I spell believe. That was my mother's expression when we had done something wrong. I am not happy. We could hardly contain ourselves when we watched, what was that Pixar movie? The Incredibles. When he gets in trouble for helping his clients too much at the insurance company, his boss calls him in, I am not happy, Bob. I must have consulted my mother when they made this film. Okay, so this one is, sorry, it's not time to go home yet. All right, so I've got two different sub procedures. Each one is hooked up to a button because that button is configured to know which procedure to call. Now that I put those sub-procedures in, I should be able to come back to Excel, click on those buttons, click me, and it should run that code. I can't believe you clicked the happy face. Sorry, it's not time to go home. So I've got both of those going on. Here's the problem. The problem now with this is, now if I want to call these, say I'm doing some development here. I want to debug that. I want to see if that thing works. I come here and say I want to call macro 1. No can do. Why not? Argument not optional. Right? It says I've got to call this. So we've got a couple of techniques to make our lives a little bit easier. One common approach is to say, listen, I'm going to create a whole series of macros that just respond to the ribbon. They don't really do anything. All they do is call another procedure that does something. So here's one approach, is to say, this is going to be called show happy message. And so all this procedure does is it calls, it's the hook into the ribbon that calls the procedure that does the real work. And I might put all of these in their own module. This is called show happy message. It's going to do the real work. So now, if I really want to test what I'm working on, I can just call show happy message. That works just fine. I can call that. So the idea is the procedure that's actually called from the module doesn't really do any work. That's procedure one. That's approach one. There's kind of a nicer approach, I think a nicer approach, and that is, it turns out that any arguments can be optional. So I can come right here and just say I want to make this optional. Making this optional doesn't change how it behaves from the ribbon, right? I can still call that one and it works just fine. But now that it's optional, I can at least call this from the immediate window. I can execute this and it will run because I no longer have to supply an argument. Works fine without the argument. The downside to that one is if I'm working on this right here, I can't just click play because it has an argument, right? It has a parameter. So I can run it from the immediate window, but I can't just execute it. So this one I can just execute it because this one doesn't have any arguments, and I just have the hook. Yep?
Could you explain again why you have to copy it from that application downloaded, and why do you copy this?
The question is, why do we have to copy these stubs from the custom UI ribbon editor? And the reason is because we've got to get this argument right here. You can type that in just fine. Yep. And so if you could remember how to type that in, you don't have to copy it. I can never remember it. And so I just copy it. But yeah, there's nothing magical happening behind the scenes here. I've just got to get this. And in fact, if you're not going to use it, you could just do this. It doesn't matter what you call it. Control's just the name. You could call it arg1. And you don't have to, it doesn't have to be an iRibbon control. It could be just object. And then, so you could write it like that. I mean, when I do write them without copying them, that's how I write them. iRibbon control, I just never remember. I guess I could look it up. Okay, other questions? Let's see what it takes to add on a brand new tab. So I'm going to save this one and close it. Go back and open it up again in the custom UI editor. So now all that VBA that I wrote is open here. I'm not going to overwrite that. I mean, we're good. We've got the most recent copy here. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to copy this whole tab block. And then I'm going to paste it. We'll have to make some changes to it. So the first one that we're going to change, I just now have a copy of it. We're going to have to change all the IDs because they have conflicts in the IDs. And this one, instead of modifying the tab, the home tab, I'm going to create my own tab. The way I tell it to create my own tab is I just don't tell it which tab to modify. Instead of giving it an ID MSO, I give it an ID. And I will call this my new tab. I need to add another property here because if I'm modifying the existing tab, that tab already has a name. It already has a label. This one's brand new, doesn't have a label. Well, can you guess what I have to do to put a label on the tab? It's the same thing I have to do to put a label onto the button or onto the group. Group has a label property, tab has a label property. So I'll come here and say label equals, and then in quotes I'll put my label. Well, let's call it favorites. So I made a new tab. It's going to say favorites on the tab. We have to put a group. So here's a group ID, custom group 1. What's the problem with custom group 1? Already used. Can't have the same ID. I'll call it custom group 2. That's fine. Instead of our latest virus, we'll call this group like formatting. This would be formatting macros. Now, since this is a brand new group, I don't have to tell it to insert after any group. So I'll just give it an ID and a label. So I've gotten rid of where it used to say the group used to say insert after, and now we're going to get rid of that. I've got 2 buttons. Why don't we call this one red font. So we'll call this, the ID for this one I'm going to call red_font. And the label will be something similar, red font. Size is large. Now instead of calling this action 1, macro 1, let's take the third approach to dealing with this, with the calls from the ribbon. I'm going to call this run button. Run, B-U-T-T-O-N. And then I got to figure out something for making the font red. I don't know. I can't find one to my liking in here. We can create our own image. But since we're not making our own image yet, I'm going to choose one of these. As many of these as there are, you'd think there's always one that does what you want it to do. But there almost never is just the right one. I guess I will choose this that looks like a capital A with a paintbrush. Maybe I'll change it to make the font blue. So that's going to be my image. Quick Styles Gallery. And I'll still leave it red font even though it's a blue paintbrush. Question? Can you use the small ones? Yes, you can. They just are small. And when they go to the large size, they look pixelated because they're stretched. Now, if I'm making them size normal instead of size large, these are the right ones to use because they're already to that smaller size. Yeah, there's a pretty good one right there. Looks like a red A. That would do pretty good for us. Okay, so this next one, instead of red font, I'm going to call this yellow fill. The label is going to be, maybe I'll just call it highlight. Size is large. Now, I'm going to call the same macro, run button. By using the same macro name, both of these buttons are going to call the same macro. It seems kind of strange since we're setting one of them up to make the font of the selection red and the other one to make the fill yellow. I'll show you how that works. And I'll need some button for this one. Fortunately, I see a yellow fill right over here, so we'll take that one. Shape, Fill, Color, Picker Classic. Great name. And again, exactly which pictures we put here doesn't really matter. It's just how the ribbon's going to be shown. Custom Group 2, I've changed all of my IDs. they're gonna call a procedure called run button. I've got to write that procedure. In fact, maybe I will just go ahead and copy my existing one instead of having to come over here to, well, I can do it from here too, run button. I'll just copy it from here. I'll check my XML, looks great, and I'll say file save. And file close. And I will reopen again in Excel. Okay, so my two buttons that I made to the Home tab are still here. If I come to Favorites, now I've got a Favorites tab. I've got these two showing here. Highlight yellow isn't yellow anymore. Well, that's just because it's an upgraded image. Now, if I click on this now, it can't run that because I don't have the code for run button. I gotta go modify my code to put the run button in there. So here's run button. But here's the good news, folks. Let's just do this. Let me do a message box of control MSG BOX of control.id. So control is the reference back to the object in the ribbon that was clicked to call this. I've got two buttons that are both going to call run button. But each one of those has a different ID. And so this should now show the ID from each of the two buttons. I can use that information to decide what to actually do inside this procedure. So now I'll come here and click on red font, and that's the ID, red font. The other one is yellow fill. So I have the difference. I can tell which button was clicked. That's great news. So what construct do you think I should use? What VBA structure is this kind of calling out for? It's not. I probably don't use an if statement. If would work. Instead, I'm going to use a case statement. Select case based on the control ID, and select case red font. I'll do something. In fact, all I'm going to do is I'm going to call another subprocedure called red font. I haven't written that yet. Case yellow fill, colon, yellow fill. I do need to create those subprocedures. Sub red font, selection dot interior, no, selection dot font dot color equals 255. I'll need one called yellow fill. See, I want to highlight that and I want to drag it. This one should be selection.interior.color equals, I don't know how to say yellow. Guess it'll be red fill. RGB. Still don't know how to do it in RGB. Red, green, and blue. So maybe 0,255, 255. I don't know if that's yellow or not. It'll be some color. Yep. Oh, VB yellow. Yeah, thanks. Is it just VB yellow? Yeah, thanks. That's going to be the number that gives me yellow. Oh, I've got 2 copies of red font. That's the number for yellow. Okay, so now the process is both of those buttons are going to call this procedure. This procedure is going to look at the ID of the button that called it and then decide what to do. This actually is my preferred way to do it. Have one procedure that all the buttons call, then have all the logic there. I can just see it right here. It calls the ones that actually do the work. So I should be able to have that font there. I should be able to font and highlight the background in yellow. There's the code. That's the gist of it. There are some more complex things we can do. You can put drop-down lists in the menu and tell which one the user has chosen. It's way more advanced than I'm going to require you to do in this class. So this is just enough to be able to get a button into the ribbon, allows you to click it and invoke your code. Now that you've seen this, if you do have to go in, you decide you do want to make a drop-down list, a little more searching to be able to get to it. Question?
How easy is it to make it so like anyone can just download your ribbon and use it?
Question is how easy is it to make it so anyone could just download my ribbon and use it? I think what you're really talking about is creating an add-in.
Yeah.
Let me show you how easy it is. Are you ready? File, save as, and instead of an XLSM, I'm going to make this an XL add-in. I just got to find it. XLAM. So I save that. It will save it as an XLAM. If someone opens that in Excel, it'll say, oh, you want to install this? Yep, install it, and that will become a ribbon that sticks around with your code behind it to work. So yeah, maybe we should have a day on working with add-ins in this course. I don't have it, but yeah, that's really all it takes. There's some other thoughts that you have to think about while you're developing your program if you're going to make it into an add-in. The big one is that your sheets aren't going to be visible, so you've got to do everything behind the scenes. But yeah, that's what it takes to make an add-in. Okay, last topic for today is what if I want to add my own picture? Here's how we do it. Let's add our own picture onto it. So I'm going to save this. I'm going to close this, open it up again in the custom UI editor. Now, I got to have some image to do this with. So, seems like 48 by 48 images. Why don't we do a icons? Oh, let's just go to icon, images. There's some images, and I'm going to adjust the size. Let's see, search tools, size to be exactly 48 by 48. Whoops. There we got some icons that are the right size. That's a fine icon. Probably should pay attention to the licensing. You can actually come here and say, you know what, I want ones that are labeled for reuse with modification, labeled for non-commercial, labeled for reuse. All right, these are all ones that's okay to reuse. There's not many. Here's the Python icon. I'm going to download this. Save image as. Download.jpg. Actually, I kind of want that to be a PNG. PNG is my preferred. It's SVG. So I guess JPG will work fine. PNG I prefer. I don't really have a good reason for why I prefer it, but I prefer it. Save as. Whoops, I just want to save it. Downloads. No. I don't want to save the link. Save the image. Save image as. Download.jpg. I'll call it python.jpg or just py.jpg. Got to give it some name. Got the file saved now. And of course, if you want to make your own images, you can. 48 by 48 is the right size. All right, so now here, there's this button right here that looks like a little image. I'll select that. I will find the image I download, and I will open it. That will bring that image in. And if I expand this, I'll be able to see that image right here. So I've got a little plus that shows up next to my custom UI. That comes in here with the name. I can change this name if I want. It's just the name without the extension, but that's the name, that's the identifier for the image. So now, instead of image MSO, in fact, I'll do it on my happy face. I'm going to change the happy face to the Python thing. Instead of image MSO, I'm just going to change it to image, and the identifier now is PY. So I'll change that to PY. So get whatever image I want. I have to bring it into the archive by using the insert icons. And then whatever identifier it has here, that's what I use for the image. Not image MSO. Image MSO means this identifier for an image that's built into Excel. Image by itself says this is an image that's been brought into this archive. Let's save it. and close it. Reopen in Excel. And now that image shows here. Notice it has a white background. I think with a PNG we can make it a transparent background, which would be a little bit slicker, but there it is. Okay, questions? Folks, there is, one day I got the urge to see if I could write my own ribbon modification tool. It's right here. It's called ribbonwizard.xlsm. It's just a workbook. If you download it, it will allow you to just kind of choose this stuff graphically, and it will produce kind of simple ribbons for you. I have found that it works for about half the students. And the ones it doesn't work for, I have no idea why it doesn't work for. So we're not going to spend any time in class on it, but that's a resource there. Download it, and if it works, it's really easy. You really just drag the pictures onto your workbook and set it up. There's some examples in there that should get you going. But this other stuff that we've gone through is kind of the standard way of doing it. Question? The question is, do the icon files have to be 48 by 48? And the answer is no. 48 by 48 is their native size. If you put in a bigger file, it'll squish it down. Smaller file, it'll stretch it up. It just will look best if you've got it at its native resolution. Other questions? If you're doing a final project, should you expect to put a ribbon modification in that final project? I think you really should expect to do that. Now, depending on your project, it may not make sense for there to be a ribbon. But if you put a button onto a worksheet and you don't put a ribbon modification in, chances are you're going to lose credit. You know how to do this ribbon modification. It is part of what makes your solution look really professional. And so you should do that. Questions before we dismiss? Thanks for coming. Class dismissed.